Last time we started looking at the Psalms and a number of different genres or forms in which the Psalms appear. And we were just looking at a psalm last time which seems to explicitly reject the Deuteronomistic interpretation of the national history and the national tragedy, depicting Israel as innocent and rebuking God for his inaction. There's another psalm in this genre that I'd like to read from. This is Psalm 44, selective passages. In God we glory at all times and praise your name unceasingly, yet you have rejected and disgraced us. You do not go with our armies. You let them devour us like sheep. You disperse us among the nations. You sell your people for no fortune. You set no high price on them. All this has come upon us, yet we have not forgotten you or been false to your covenant. Very different from what the prophets have been screaming. Right? Our hearts have not gone astray, nor have our feet swerved from your path, though you cast us crushed to where the sea monster is and covered us over with deepest darkness. If we forgot the name of our God and spread forth our hands to a foreign God, God would surely search it out, for he knows the secrets of the heart. It is for your sake that we are slain all day long and that we are regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. Rouse yourself. Why do you sleep, O Lord? Awaken, do not reject us forever. Why do you hide your face, ignoring our affliction and distress? We lie prostrate in the dust. Our body clings to the ground. Arise and help us. Redeem us as befits your faithfulness. So here's a psalm full of anger that contains an explicit denial of the rhetorically inflamed charges against Israel that we read in many of the prophetic books. We have not forgotten you. We haven't been false to your covenant. Our hearts haven't gone astray. We haven't swerved from your path. Why are you behaving this way? This astonishing protestation of innocence that accuses God of sleeping on the job is reminiscent of Job. In a way, the two conflicting viewpoints that we see running through a lot of this literature, one in which there is suffering, therefore there must be sin. Israel has sinned horribly. And the other, there is inexplicable suffering. We haven't done anything that would deserve this, anything at all. It really is reminiscent of Job. It seems to give us these two perspectives on Job's suffering as an individual. We see that now played out on the level of the nation. One that is asserting, and what we have here is a view that is asserting God's negligence rather than Israel's guilt. But then you can contrast Psalms like 44, the one I've just read, and 74, which I read at the end of the last lecture, with Psalms 78 and 106. These Psalms belong to the category of hymns. Some people call this category hymns in celebration of divine action in Israel's history, the sort of historical reviews that praise God for all he has done for Israel. And they toe the Deuteronomistic line in their recapitulation of Israel's history, from the creation, from the Exodus, and on to the conquest of the Promised Land. They stress Israel's utter indebtedness to God. God has patiently endured Israel's constant faithlessness. And so when you juxtapose these two types of psalms, they're just remarkably different. He performed marvels in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt, the plain of Zoan. He split the sea and took them through it. He made waters stand like a wall. It continues. He split rocks in the wilderness. So it's a recounting of all the marvelous things that God has done. But they went on sinning against him, defying the Most High in the parched land. To test God was in their mind when they demanded food for themselves. They spoke against God, saying, "Can God spread a feast in the wilderness? True, he struck the rock and waters flowed and streams gushed forth, but can he provide bread? Can he supply his people with meat?" It's interesting that this is in the third person. They did all these terrible, sinful things. The psalm that I just read previously that protests Israel's innocence is in the first person. We have not strayed at all. We've been completely faithful to you. Why are you treating us this way? So God's faithful actions, Israel's faithless responses are featured in the psalm that I just read and also in 106. They toe the Deuteronomistic line, and again we see this clear attempt to explain Israel's tragic end, and here again the tendency is to blame Israel and to justify God at all costs. We move on now to the genre of psalms. Actually, these are sort of two genres that I'm putting together, the genres of blessing and cursing. Obviously, they're rather antithetical. But these are psalms, first of all, psalms of blessing are psalms that invoke God to bless the righteous. It might be the nation Israel, or it might be the righteous within the nation, and to punish or afflict the wicked. And again, that can be enemy nations, or it can be the wicked within Israel and other nations. And sometimes these psalms can be quite shocking in their violence and in their fury. Psalm 137, by the waters of Babylon, Very rarely people read all the way to the end of that particular psalm. It's very poignant at the beginning, but at the very end it calls for vengeance on the Babylonians who destroyed Jerusalem. Verses 8 and 9, "Fair Babylon, you predator, a blessing on him who repays you in kind what you have inflicted on us, a blessing on him who seizes your babies and dashes them against the rocks." Psalm 109 contains this very lengthy list of terrible afflictions that the psalmist is asking God to smite his foes with. That was a poorly constructed sentence. That the psalmist is asking God to, I don't want to say bestow, but inflict upon his foe. Verses 8 and 10, "May his days be few. May another take over his position. May his children be orphans, his wife a widow." That's a nice way of saying may he die, right? "May his children wander from their hovels, begging in search of bread. May he be clothed in a curse like a garment. May it enter his body like water, his bones like oil. Let it be like the cloak he wraps around him, like the belt he always wears. May the Lord thus repay my accusers and all those who speak evil against me." So again, it's hardly the simple piety that we often associate with the book of Psalms. The last category I just want to briefly mention is a category of Psalms that have a reflective or meditative tone. These are Psalms of wisdom, Psalms in praise of instruction or Torah, and meditation. They're somewhat proverbial in nature. Many of them will begin with this sort of stock phrase, "Happy is the man who." So we see that in Psalm 128. "Happy are all who fear the Lord, who follow his ways. You shall enjoy the fruit of your labors. You shall be happy and shall prosper. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house, your sons like olive saplings around your table. So shall the man who fears the Lord be blessed," or reveres the Lord is the sense of fear there. Many Psalms we've seen seem to presuppose worship in the temple, and can even have that antiphonal character, the call and response or call and echo character, but there are three that instead have this theme of meditating upon or delighting in the Torah. That's Psalm 1, Psalm 19, and Psalm 119, conveniently enough. 119 is the longest psalm because it's written in acrostic form. There are different stanzas, a different stanza for each letter of the alphabet, 22 letters, and there are 8 lines in each stanza, all 8 lines beginning with that letter of the alphabet. So it's a very, very long psalm. And the psalm represents Torah as an object of study and devotion. Studying Torah makes one wise and happy. Psalm 19, verses 8 through 11. "The teaching of the Lord is perfect, renewing life. The decrees of the Lord are enduring, making the simple wise. The precepts of the Lord are just, rejoicing the heart. The instruction of the Lord is lucid, making the eyes light up. The fear or reverence of the Lord is pure, abiding forever. The judgments of the Lord are true, righteous altogether, more desirable than gold, than much fine gold, sweeter than honey, than drippings of the comb." And so this elevation of Torah reflects a shift that begins or starts to occur in the Second Temple period, the late Second Temple period, in which Torah is of growing importance, and in about 2 minutes we're going to start to talk about this period and the importance and centrality of Torah, its centrality in terms of study and the study of Torah as a form of worship. So there are many different ways to categorize and classify the Psalms. Many individual Psalms seem to combine units that belong to different categories. So for example, you have Psalm 22, which opens as a lament. My God, why have you forsaken me?" That's the well-known RSV translation. And then it changes to a hymn of praise. It concludes with this, it goes on into a kind of confident triumph. At least one psalm, Psalm 68, really defies any kind of rigid categorization. So we can't be too strict in trying to impose these forms. They are helpful guides to the interpretation of the Psalms. But again, we can't be too rigid about it. But from the sampling that we've seen, it should be apparent that the Psalms are a microcosm of the religious insights and convictions of ancient Israelites. Perhaps because so many of them lack historical specificity. Some of them are quite historical. Some of them, in fact, recount Israel's history in order to praise God. But many of them, very, very many of them, lack any real historical specificity. And that is probably the reason that the Psalms have become a great source for personal spirituality in Western civilization. Some of them were composed perhaps as many as 3,000 years ago, and yet they can be inspiring or they can feel relevant to contemporary readers.